Good evening, everybody. Hello and welcome along to the commentary hub for this Euro 2020 preview show. It is finally here, a year in the making, and yes, it has been delayed, and of course there has been a lot of repercussions, but we can finally say we have another European Championship on the horizon. This is a tournament that is well known to be causing various shocks. Just ask Greece, just ask Denmark in 2004 and 1992 respectively about not being the favourites and winning the tournament. The bigger guns, France, Portugal, Italy, Spain, they've all tasted victory in this famous old competition. Will we see a new name on the Henri Delaunay Trophy for 2020, or will it be a new regular sort of name on it, the likes of France, Portugal, Italy adding to their titles already before? And of course, we are ready for the European Championships, of course, on the commentary hub. You can listen to our exclusive coverage live and free on StreamYard and our various social media platforms. So without further ado, let's get started, of course. And joining me as co-host is Russ Vernon, as ever. And of course, I'll bring him in later on as he just makes the final few changes to the stream. So first of all, let's go to Barry. Barry, it's a tournament that does produce its shocks, as I've mentioned. It can produce some memorable moments. It does feel like, in my lifetime personally, the European Championship, to some degree, always brings a surprise of some sort, whether it's a game, a refereeing decision, or even a tournament winner for that fact. How do you see these European Championships going? And are you looking forward to it with the kickoff being, essentially now 24 hours away?
I'm really looking forward to it, Matt. And yeah, I wouldn't like to call it. I've predicted so many of these World Cups and Euros in the past, and I don't think I've ever got it right. I think this year is even more unpredictable than normal. We've crammed a lot of football into the last few months. There's going to be fatigue. I think those 26-man squads are going to be stretched more than ever. I think the winner of this tournament, it's going to be heavily down to the coach. I think the coach is going to win this tournament by utilising their squad to the maximum, because there's not going to be many players out there after a long, heavy season that are going to be able to give 100% through every single game in this competition. So I think that's the key. I think that breaks it wide open. You look at the lesser teams in there, the Switzerlands, the Macedonians, the Finlands. They've still got good players. They're still capable of beating the big guns, and I think that's the great thing. And we've looked back at Denmark, we've looked back at Greece. Why can't it happen again? You never know. Scotland, could be holding a trophy on July the 11th. You just never know.
Who knows exactly, of course. It could be Scotland. It could be somebody else holding that trophy. Of course, the current holders are Portugal, of course, after their win against France in 2016. So everybody tuning in, thank you very much. Take a seat, grab a beer or grab a drink, whatever. You're in for the long ride, as this is your comprehensive guide to the European Championships of 2020. 24 sides involved over a month of football in what promises to be, hopefully, exciting football nonetheless. And let's hope that football does well and truly come home at Wembley Stadium. And of course, John Stuttard will be one of our commentators on various games throughout the European Championships. Good evening to you, John. Just the same sort of question to Barry. Are you looking forward to these European Championships? Seems we have a little bit of a break there as a bit of technical problems. So I'll relay the question to John. Seems as though we seem to be breaking up with John Stuttard there, so I do apologise for that. So I'll go to John Kane instead. Are you very much looking forward to these European Championships, and sort of relaying the same question to Barry?
Very much so. We always look forward to this every 4 years. I mean, sadly, because of the pandemic over the last year or so, the Euros got moved from being Euro 2020 to Euro 2021. But the expectation will still be the same. I'm very much looking forward to it. Like I said, last summer, I was waiting for it for last summer. Sadly, due to the current circumstances, it got moved. And I'm hoping to see a very good performance from certain teams. Obviously, the notable ones. And I think, in general, we are going to see quite a good tournament. Obviously, we've got a bigger squad because of the issues, but I think it'll still be a success.
Well, of course, it is up to the whole of the teams involved to really put on a show for what's been a real testing year for all of those countries in the continent. And of course, we hope that it will be just as exciting and well worth the 12-month delay. So before we go and cast our eye into the groups and who's got who and who could potentially go through, let's take a look at England, of course. They will be playing their opening game against Croatia on Sunday at 2 p.m. at Wembley. Jack, looking at the squad, first of all, are you surprised by the squad that's been named? I mean, obviously, the biggest one that he's had to make so far was that Trent Alexander-Arnold obviously departed due to an injury sustained in the warm-up game against Austria. Ben White's in. If you were Gareth Southgate and you were looking ahead to that Croatia game on Sunday, what would your preferred lineup be, and which sort of players do you think maybe have a real chance of being in that opening game 11?
Yeah, so I mean, well, thanks for having us on, Matt. Obviously looking forward to the Euros itself, and I do think England have a good chance. I look at the squad, and I really like the squad, to be honest. I mean, there was obviously the rumours of Trent being left out. Turns out that was, well, mistaken, and he was probably always going to be included. Obviously, he's missed out in the end. In comes Ben White, done very well for Brighton. Young, can pass the ball well, carries the ball out well, but I think a lot of people would actually argue that of all three of the Brighton centre-backs, he's actually had the worst season. So it could have been Dunk or Webster ahead of him, maybe. I probably would have had James Ward-Prowse in, just for his set-piece delivery and the fact he's played every minute of the Premier League for the last 2 seasons, I believe. So he's just got that ridiculous engine, so I would have had him in. In terms of the team, I think the team that I would have is different to the team that Southgate would have. So we're hearing rumours of Luke Shaw perhaps starting at centre-back tomorrow. Not sure on that one, really, because then you got Kyle Walker potentially playing as the right side centre back as well. So, 4 full-backs in the back 5. I don't know. I'd go with a back 4. I know Maguire is missing. That's the big one. You've also got the goalkeeper. I mean, Pickford will start. For me, it should be Dean Henderson. And then it's a case of how do you get the rest of the talent in? So how do you get Grealish in the side? How do you get Ford in the side? How do you get Mount in the side? How do you get Sterling in the side? But you could argue that Sterling doesn't really deserve to start in the way he ended the season. So, for me, I want to see an attacking side. Croatia are not the team that they were when they got the World Cup final. A lot of their players are a lot older now. They've, some of them have retired. They're coming towards the end of their cycle, is what I would say. So I think we should be going out there and trying to dominate that midfield battle, because obviously they've still got Luka Modric. So you get Declan Rice on him, control the midfield. And then I want to see Foden starting. I want to see Grealish starting. I want to see Mason Mount starting. And I don't think Sterling and Rashford deserve to start, in my honest opinion. I do think Southgate will start them, but I would have Mount, Foden and Grealish in the same side somehow, with Rice holding. Probably get Bellingham in there as well if you can.
Well, there is that overriding feeling amongst England fans, Russ, that obviously Grealish and Foden really should be playing, given how Grealish has really fared in the warm-up games in particular. Obviously, the big thing that comes into it at the moment, pre-match, is Harry Maguire fit enough to start? I mean, obviously, he's had an ankle problem that basically cut short his Manchester United season toward the back end of the Premier League campaign, and of course he missed the Europa League final. Do you think he will be fit enough Sunday to start? And if he is not 100% fit and is available for selection, would you put him at the heart of the defence in the 3 or in the 2 that Southgate might have as centre backs?
Good evening, everyone. I won't pick him in my side, and I've heard a rumour earlier today that Maguire will not be fit enough for this game, and it looks like Southgate may go with a back 4 potentially, and then may change it as the game progresses, see how things go. I've got my actual team, which I would pick for the starting lineup, and my back 4 would be Reece James at right back with Luke Shaw at left back, and then I've gone with Tyrone Mings and Connor Cody as centre back. You could potentially put Ben White in ahead of Tyrone Mings after Mings' performance last weekend in the last warm-up game and in the first warm-up game that we had against Austria and Romania. But Mings and Cody probably be the 2 I'd pick out of that defence. I'd also have Dean Henderson in goal, like Jack said he would have Henderson in goal. My midfield 3, which may come as a bit of a surprise to people. And tell me what yours is as well, guys, a little bit later on if you want, or get them in the comments if you're watching on any of the platforms. I've gone with Bellingham in the more advanced, with Phillips playing alongside him, and then Declan Rice is the holding role. Because in the games in the World Cup qualifiers where England played Rice and Phillips, that seemed to work quite well. Because if Rice gets forward, Phillips can then drop back, and vice versa. And then I'd have Foden on one side, Grealish on the other, with Kane through the middle. So that's my starting lineup for Sunday, with Maguire not making it, and I'd have Maguire on the bench because he's missed the warm-up matches, missed back end of Manchester United season. I don't think he'd be 100% fit for the tournament. Well, to start this opener, he may play in the Scotland game, in the Czech Republic game, but I won't start him in the first game, Matt.
Very interesting point that you make, to say the least. We'll go on to England a little bit more later on in the preview show, but let's, of course, take a look at how Group A looks, of course. It will be Italy who get us underway in Rome tomorrow. Of course, there is a host of cities, of course, taking part and being hosting games in Euro 2020. Wembley, of course, is hosting some games. We've got Rome. We have, of course, Seville, Bucharest, Budapest. We've also got in there St. Petersburg, Copenhagen, and of course Munich will host games as well over the course of the next month or so. So of course Group A will have Turkey, Italy, Wales and Switzerland. Of course Russ Vernon will be bringing you the opening game on StreamYard tomorrow, and of course on the various social media platforms. It's now time to bring in Nicholas Jones. It's good evening, first of all, Nicholas. Group A obviously consists of Turkey, Italy, Wales and Switzerland. A lot of people fancy Italy to really not just win this group quite comfortably, but to go really far in the tournament. They've not lost since November 2018. Do you firmly believe that Roberto Mancini can take the Nerazzurri to great heights again, something that 3 years ago they didn't even qualify the World Cup for? So you've got to say, coming into the tournament, they're real big favourites, aren't they?
Well, Italy are always a highly fancied side in whichever tournament they're in, but I would say Turkey look pretty decent as well. So if I was to pick the top two to automatically go through to the next round, it would have to be Italy or Turkey. But don't forget Wales in the last Euros; they made it through to the semi-finals. So potentially, if Wales managed to sort the sides out and to produce really good games, they could go even further than that.
Well, absolutely. Of course, the beauty about Euro 2020, and it's the same with Euro 2016, the previous tournament, is six of the eight sides who finish in third place will progress to the next knockout stage. So any side that finishes third is massively important, of course. If you finish dead last in your group, you are immediately packing up your bags and going home. Nicholas talked about Wales there, Jack. Obviously, Ryan Giggs is not the manager. He's led them through qualifying, of course. He's got a court case to come next year. So Rob Page, who, of course, managed Port Vale in Northampton, is going to be leading Wales in the European Championships. Of course, they take on Switzerland in Baku in their opening game, 2 o'clock on Saturday. Wales, of course, completely shocked everybody by reaching the semi-finals and beating Belgium 4 years ago or 5 years ago, given it is 2021. Are they going to have the same impact on the European stage, or do you think they're going to have to do something seriously well to repeat that?
I'm going to be pretty brutal and say no, they're not going to get the semi-final this time. I'm not even sure they're going to get the group, to be honest. I think Group A is quite a strong group. I think Italy will top it. And then Turkey have had some really weird results, but they score a lot of goals, concede a lot of goals as well. Switzerland are always a pretty solid side in these sort of tournaments. I think they've got to the last 16 in the World Cup and the Euros last time. So I don't know, it's hard for Wales. I mean, obviously they've got Bale, who's had a full season in the Premier League, did score quite a few goals for Spurs. I think his performances were up and down, but overall, if you look at how he did for Tottenham, he did do well. But obviously then they're relying on, the likes of Joe Allen still, who spent the whole season at Stoke, and, up front, and Dan James for Manchester United, who, he didn't play that much really. And did he impress when he played for them? I don't know. It's hard for Wales. I can't see them getting out of the group, to be honest.
Obviously, John, John Stuttard, that is, of course. There is two Johns on the live preview show. So if I do say John, I will try and get your last name in as quickly as possible, just to make it easy for us. Obviously, you'll be covering Wales, Switzerland in Baku from your studio, shall we say, on Saturday afternoon. Switzerland have always been a solid nation. They seem to always do enough to get into the knockout stages, but once they get in there, they tend to fall short. What do you rate of Switzerland's chances progressing out of this group, first of all, and potentially going into the knockout stages? Because their record in knockout stages is in the Euros and the World Cup is pretty awful by all accounts, as much as anything else. Seem to be getting no sound from John Stuttard. So I'll try and relay the question somewhere else. I do acknowledge that he is in the stream. I'm not trying to completely talk over him. There is technical difficulties on his end. So I'll relay the question to John Kane, just basically about Switzerland. There's obviously Granit Xhaka in their team. Obviously, they have got a host of German players in there, the likes of Dennis Zakaria, obviously from Borussia Mönchengladbach, obviously Breel Embolo, of course, his teammate. They're a solid nation. Do you expect them to go quite far in this tournament?
I expect them to get to the second stage, funny enough, because Switzerland, as everyone else kept saying, that they are a very strong team, and they always played the sort of the good defensive style that got them places before. I think it was not too last World Cup, the World Cup before, where they managed to get the 3 draws in the group. So they're actually very good when it comes to that. And they've been consistent in playing that style of football. Not entertaining, not beautiful, but it gets them somewhere. And someone like Xhaka, as you mentioned, who is apparently the rumours today that he might be going to Roma for 18 million to link up with Jose Mourinho, of all people. And so obviously he is actually, regardless of what Arsenal fans think of him, but he is able to do quite good things for the Swiss club. Probably that not as much that he's done it with Arsenal, but he's got the ability on the international level to help out Switzerland to play their style rather than actually the Arsenal style that we've seen in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a talisman for the Swiss team. And of course, we have mentioned Turkey. So it's only about time that we give them a mention. Of course, they include some good, well-known players. Of course, they've got one of the best players in France in Yusuf Yazici. Of course, Burak Yilmaz, the captain, is a real talisman and a real experienced figure up front. Hakan Çalhanoğlu is a name that, of course, is very familiar to some. I'll relay this to Barry. Of course, Turkey come into this with a coach in Şenol Güneş, who led them to their finest hour in 2002, guiding them to the World Cup. He's a very old coach, but it might just go to show that it doesn't matter about age. You still could potentially get the job done. Do you think they might look at this group and think, do you know what, we can make third place ours and hopefully get enough points to get into the round of 16?
Yeah, definitely. You look at these squads. I think Wales are the outsiders for me. No disrespect to what they've done 5 years ago, but I don't think they're the same Wales as the last time when they got to the semi-final. But you look at the Turkey squad and you look at the Swiss squad. They've got a spattering of quality in there. Are they going to win it? Probably not. Although we've talked about the Euros before, haven't we? The Swiss have got some decent players, but this Turkish side has some decent strength in there. There's no reason. I think it's between Switzerland and Turkey finished second. Nothing's for sure in football, but I would imagine Italy are pretty nailed on to win this group, certainly to get out of it in the form that they've been showing. And this is a Turkey side. When you look at the Swiss side, there's a lot of Premier League and a lot of Bundesliga experience. Maybe gives them the edge, but there's still a lot of quality in this Turkish side. A lot of home-based talent, but one or two from the Bundesliga, one or two from the Premier League. I think they could be dark horses in this group. I think it's between them and Switzerland for second.
So it does almost feel like with the overwhelming majority that Italy will progress and finish quite comfortably top, shall we say, in Group A. Of course, they are one of the host nations. Of course, they kick off tomorrow at the Stadio Olimpico against Turkey from 8 o'clock. Now, let's move on to Group B, of course. We include one of two debutants in the tournament in Finland. Belgium, the best ranked side, not just in Europe, but in the world in these European Championships going into them. Anyway, Denmark, who have come a long, long way under Kasper Hjulmand in his first major tournament as coach, and of course the World Cup quarter-finalists. Russia. Nicholas Jones will be on the mic for Finland against Denmark. The Nordic derby, of course, makes up a lot of the countries in and around there. Nicholas, let's start with Finland first. This is uncharted territory for them. They're heading into the unknown. Their first major tournament, of course, Timo Pukki has been so instrumental for them. He scored 10 of their 16 goals in qualifying to reach the European Championships for the very first time. How do you rate their potential chances? Because it does look like it's a very big ask of them to get third place, let alone fourth.
Yes, for Finland, it's a really big pond for them. I know that they've got 1,000 lakes over there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is more. But Euro 2020 for them is like a really big ocean for them. Obviously, Teemu Pukki being injured is going to have a bit of an effect on them. But they've got one or two other pretty decent players. One of which is likely to be Marcus Forss, who guided Brentford to the Premier League. Just a couple of weeks ago now, but in terms of where Finland would be, I would say that given their lack of international experience, I don't expect them to go beyond the group stage.
That's a very interesting point that you've made there. I don't think a lot of people would expect Finland to be, of course, really challenging Belgium or Denmark or even Russia for that fact, for even 1, 2 or 3 in the group. But of course, one thing that Finland do possess is they have a strong defence. You know, of course, I've covered one of their warm-up games against Sweden, and they were very hard to break down. They tend to play with a 5 or a 3 at the back and then sort of allow, you know, a lot of quick play, the likes of very creative midfielder, a player called Onni Valakari. Of course, he's been a real key player in Cyprus for Paphos. He's an interesting talent, to say the least. He's a key player for them, but of course, it will be interesting to see how Finland get on. Let's talk about Belgium. Now, of course, as we know, Belgium have got a host of talent. Romelu Lukaku, of course, is one of a host of players that are well known. Of course, yes, Eden Hazard might have had an injury-plagued 2 years at Real Madrid, but of course, he is still a player on his day, is to be feared. Russ, they are the best side coming into these Euros in the world. Are they going to finally get their name on a trophy and really fit the tag of their own golden generation, shall we say? What do you make of their chances?
I think they're going to get out of the group 100%, and I'm not going to say where, because I'm going to let you know that a little bit later on in the box, where I think they're going to come in the group stage. But I don't think they're going to get out of the group. Belgium, I've been looking at the squad earlier on today. Toby Alderweireld is in there, experienced defender who's got a lot of experience from in and around the Premier League. Thomas Vermaelen, who's been in the Premier League as well, now playing straight out in Benfica, another good centre-back. But you've mentioned Eden Hazard there, Michy Batshuayi as well, and not forgetting Christian Benteke. He's had a pretty good season with Crystal Palace, who recently lost the party company at the end of this month with former England boss Roy Hodgson as their manager, and still struggling to get a manager there is Crystal Palace. But they've got some decent players. Dennis Prayer as well from Leicester, who's had a very good season. Yuri Tillemans, Timothy Castagna as well in there. So they've got a good squad about them, Belgium, and I think they're going to go. I think they're going to do well in the tournament. I'm not going to say exactly where. I'll let you know about that a little bit later on in the programme, but I do think they're going to have a very good tournament, Belgium, but I'm not going to say where they're going to come in my predictions until later on in the show. But I think
Plus, off the back of that, I was going to say, off the back of that, I actually covered a game involving Belgium last week, and they were uninspiring to me, but they did have a lot of players out. But there's one player to add to that list of, it's an ageing squad, but there's a young 19-year-old winger who's currently playing in France for Rennes. He used to be at Anderlecht, and Rennes paid a lot of money for him just 6 months ago. Jeremy Doku looked very, very good, very quick, very skillful. You know, I think they will blood him to try and give this side, an ageing side, a little bit of pace. plays on the right wing, comes inside, very, very good player. Be interested to see how he gets on. He could be one of the stars in this tournament from what I have seen of him and from what I have heard about him. But it is an aging squad, this Belgian side, and I wasn't that impressed. I know it was French players. Lukaku looked uninterested last week, to be honest. I'm sure it won't be the case when the Euros come around, but I'm not entirely convinced by this Belgian team personally. But I think this lad Jeremy Doku, one to note down and look out for in the tournament. He's going to have a shocker now, isn't he?
More than likely, Barry, now you mentioned that,
That's the way
Barry.
it goes.
Normally, if you praise someone, they're going to normally have a shocker afterwards, as you've probably seen by praising a few Fulham players over the years, Barry.
Yeah.
Commentators curse before the tournament even begins.
Well, you did say, Barry, that usually your predictions do go up in the wall, go blowing up and smoke in your face very, very quickly. So let's hope you are right this time round. So I just want to kind of ask you, Barry, as well. It almost feels like to me, Romelu Lukaku, there's a lot of pressure on him in particular. You did mention, rightly so, that this is an aging Belgium squad. Of course, De Bruyne, as we know, is in there. Yuri Tielemans as well, two players that haven't even got a mention, and they've had real big seasons with Leicester and Manchester City, respectively. But it feels like to me with Belgium that if Lukaku's on form, then Belgium really will be on form. I feel like he's going to be the go-to man, not just to score goals, which he's obviously in the team to do, but in terms of him playing well and leading that line, because he brings so much more to this Belgium team than just scoring goals, doesn't he?
It was interesting, actually, because I saw Lukaku playing for Anderlecht when he was about 18 or 19, similar age to Doku I just mentioned, and I thought, he's a real talent. But I have to be honest, the jury's kind of out for Lukaku. Is he a world-class striker? Is he a classy striker? Is he a top-draw striker? Did he prove himself at Manchester United? Is he on his way from Italian football this summer? We just don't know. He didn't look interested. I'll be honest with you. I thought he looked slightly unfit and slightly overweight, but he's a big lad, and they are depending on him because let's face it, if you take Lukaku out of the equation, you've got Batshuayi or his Crystal Palace teammate Benteke. You've not got a lot that you can shove straight down the middle. So it's they're very limited in striking options. I know a lot of these teams don't play without and out strikers now. When you've got the likes of Hazard and De Bruyne around, then they can adapt. But they are relying heavily on him. They need goals from him.
Yeah. Well, of course, let's move on to a side that I think are going to go very, very far in these European Championships, and that's Denmark. They're a side who, of course, have got a host of talent in their side. Just names to mention, of course, the likes of Christian Eriksen. Also, as well in their team, they possess Yusuf Poulsen, the big striker from RB Leipzig. Of course, as well in their side, they've got a lot of English players in there. Of course, you think of Andreas Christensen from Chelsea. He's one of them, of course, as well. Yannick Vestergaard, Joachim Andersen, who's had a very good season at Fulham, been linked with Tottenham Hotspur in recent weeks. Of course, under Age Haride, Jack, they were very defensive in the World Cup. Of course, they were unbeaten. They squeezed past Peru, drew against the world champions, and got a draw out of Australia, and then, of course, were taken all the way by Croatia to penalties. But under Kasper Hjulmand, the former Nordsjælland and Mainz coach, they've changed their approach, and it's very attack-minded, isn't it? I mean, as I said, I do like the look of this Denmark side, and I do think that they could really challenge Belgium for that top spot in Group B.
Yeah, I mean, I think Denmark are one of the teams who maybe you look at it as dark horses. I think you look at the squad, they've got vast Premier League experience with Schmeichel, Eriksen, Højbjerg. Their defence is really good. Like their options of centre-backs, you've got Christensen, Andersen, Vestergaard. So there's some solid centre-backs there, definitely. So, and in midfield, Delaney, Eriksen, Jensen from Brentford, who's a very, very good player. Very impressed whenever I've seen him play. Skov from Hoffenheim can play literally anywhere. I think left or the right, plays left back, left wing, left wing. So he's pretty impressive. I think the only thing they're lacking, Poulsen is good, and he does score a few goals, but his international record's not amazing. 52 caps, 7 goals. And Kasper Dolberg as well, who's another player who 24 caps, 7 goals, so a better record, but maybe that's where they're lacking. And when it comes to later on in the tournament, that's where it's going to come. They need a striker who's going to get them the goals. I don't know if they've necessarily got that, but I do think they'll get out of the group comfortably. And I think they might get maybe the quarter final.
Quarterfinals, says Jack, of course. And as well, one thing about Denmark is they do tend to play with wing backs. And as you mentioned there, Robert Skov, who plays his club football for Hoffenheim, as you said, he plays left back, left wing, right back. He can virtually play anywhere. He's very versatile. Yeah. And of course, Jens Striegel Larsen is their other left wing back. So do watch out for Denmark in terms of how they play, because they are a very exciting side to watch. As many fans will know, given when England lost to them at Wembley 2-1 in the Nations League in November. The last side in that group is Russia. Of course, they reached the quarterfinals in their own World Cup 3 years ago. They will be hosting games at the Krestovsky Stadium in St. Petersburg, as it did in the World Cup 3 years ago. Nicholas, I mean, you know, it was a complete whirlwind what Russia did. It caught one of the biggest countries in the world, and literally the world was engulfed by Russia in terms of, you know, their real resilience and their real spirit. And they really put on a show, not just for a World Cup, but in terms of their team, really putting pride in a nation that had lost its way in football in terms. How do you rate their chances this time around? Because it's not really a lot of change in terms of how they play, but in terms of a lot of their squad, there is a lot of changes as well. Do you think that they could maybe really challenge Belgium and Denmark, who we think are going to be the overwhelming clear two to get out of Group B?
Given the changes you've mentioned within the squad, I expect Russia to go as far as the round of 16, but certainly not into the quarterfinals like they did in the World Cup. How they did it at the World Cup a few years ago completely astounded everyone, including myself. But I don't expect such heroics from Russia this time round.
No heroics from Russia, according to Nicholas Jones. But, of course, they completely blew everyone away with their performances in the World Cup. Can they do it again? Of course, they kick off against Belgium at 8 o'clock on Saturday in Group B. Now we move on to Group C, of course. This includes the Netherlands, the 1988 winners, Ukraine under Andrei Shevchenko. What a name he is. What a blast from the past. There's also another set of debutants in North Macedonia. And an amazing stat about them, Goran Pandev is older than the country itself, given its independent and name change. And, of course, the last side in that group as well is none other than Austria. Let's start with the Netherlands. Obviously, they are a side who possess so much good quality. Of course, Gini Wijnaldum, Memphis Depay, of course, looks like he's on his way to Barcelona. Memphis Depay, that is. Of course, other names in there as well. Of course, they have lost Donny van der Beek, who was ruled out with an injury just this week in the Dutch camp. So it means, of course, they've not actually called anybody up. But, of course, there are still some good names in that team. Young players like Frankie de Jong, who, of course, caused England a few problems or two in the Nations League a couple of years ago. John Kane, the Dutch, is always a name that is very synonymous with good attacking football. Coached by Frank de Boer, of course, as many people will know, had a shocking spell at Crystal Palace, which lasted 4 games. Do you maybe rate their chances as slimming down because of the managerial change in Ronald Koeman going, or do you still think they'll be a real strong force to be reckoned with at these championships?
I'm going to go back to the old cliche about Holland, which is, as we've known for many, many decades, when they had one of the best players in the world as squads. But when it actually come to the crunch, they could not do it. Yeah. And I think the same thing is going to happen again today in this tournament. I actually fear for Holland this tournament. I think they're going to even struggle to get out of the group. I mean, someone like Frank de Boer. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah, sorry. Frank de Boer is not a good manager. I mean, let's put it up in the tape. It's not a good manager at all. Not just with Palace, but even his time in Holland prior and then in Italy. It's not really a good record. And I don't understand why Holland it's one of the teams in the world who keep bringing up ex-players just because their names are big and they assume straight away that they can lead them to better places. I think personally, if they bought someone like Ruud Gullit, he'd probably been a better choice to lead this Dutch team. But I actually fear for this team. I actually watched them against Scotland, and they're not good. That team is just not good enough, regardless of the players that they got. And I don't even think they're going to come out of the group. I know it seems a bit shocking to some people because it's Holland we're talking about, but I think they're a very poor team, regardless, because you don't find that charisma in that team anymore. It's not what it used to be. They've got the individuals, but as a team, They just got to break completely.
Totally agree with what you're saying there, John. One thing I will say, and by the way, Belgium, going back to Group B just for a second, their first two games essentially are away from home, away in the country of their opponents. With the Dutch, their three games in this group are all in Amsterdam, and I think that might just sway it for me. But I do agree with you, John. I think they're a team of individuals, not a team, and I think Van Dijk will be missed massively.
Well, the one thing you can always say about the Dutch is there has been very well documented times where there's been a very unhappy camp. Euro 96, Edgar Davids was sent home for disruption. Of course, in 2012, it almost felt like there was whispers of real dressing room unrest. Of course, we saw Wesley Sneijder and Arjen Robben voice their disapproval towards the cameras during the championships in Poland and Ukraine. So let's hope the Dutch have a very happy camp this time round. Barry, of course, you're covering the game for us on the Commentary Hub on Sunday against Ukraine. Let's move on to Ukraine under Andrei Shevchenko. Arguably, let's no arguing about it, the greatest footballer that's ever come out of Ukraine since their independence from the Soviet Union. A young squad, very inexperienced squad, made up of Shakhtar Donetsk and Dynamo Kiev players you'd expect. How do you rate their chances? Because they had a, quite frankly, shocking European Championships 4 years ago. They got beat by Poland, Northern Ireland and Germany, didn't score a goal. It's a young squad, young, hungry squad. Do you see that there's potential in this team under Shevchenko in his first major tournament in charge of Ukraine?
I don't think there's enough quality there for them to carry on further into the tournament beyond perhaps the first knockout stage. I think there's every chance that they could get out of the group. They'll probably rely on Zinchenko heavily as a central midfielder as opposed to where we see him playing for Manchester City in a fullback position. Yarmolenko, plenty of experience there, but listen, he hasn't pulled up trees for West Ham, has he? And a lot of their players are based back in their homeland. Dynamo Kiev, Shakhtar players in there as well. But listen, those players have got plenty of European experience, and yes, it's a young side, but there is some experience in there. I just wonder where the goals are going to come from. Yarmolenko scored more goals for the Ukraine than the rest of the squad put together by some considerable distance, probably double. He's got 40. The next biggest hitter is Yaremchuk with just the 8 goals. So that's a concern, I think, is where they're going to get the goals from, because I don't think you're going to be relying heavily on Yarmolenko, who's now 31 years of age, and as I say, hasn't been pulling up trees for West Ham. So I'm kind of underwhelmed, but looking at that squad on paper, there is a capability there. I think they might well get through the group, but I don't think they'll get much further.
So that is a very interesting point made about Ukraine, of course, and Andrei Yarmolenko, who is, and certainly Zinchenko, are the standout names within that. Let's talk about the second debutants, North Macedonia. Of course, there was a lot of controversy by the fact that they were in it, given their low ranking. They are the lowest ranked side coming into these European Championships. Only Finland are the second worst side, which is quite fitting given their international status, of course. They were in the Nations League, which they progressed well in, and beat Georgia in a playoff to book their place. It's the first time we've seen them in a major tournament. Rush, you will be covering them during the tournament. You'll be covering their second game against Ukraine in Bucharest, where, of course, they do play 2 of their 3 matches. Nicholas spoke about Finland in terms of it being, seismic what they're doing. They're almost jumping into the ocean because it's that big a jump for them. North Macedonia, they're very similar, aren't they, in terms of, what they're both going through. Obviously, there's a name that you'll certainly know in Gianni Alioski, but, this is a tournament where they can just say we're under no pressure and it's a free hit. Let's go out there and enjoy it, surely.
Yes, that is 100% correct, Matt. And as you mentioned, Gianni Alioski, Leeds United player, just been offered a fresh contract at the end of the season at Ellen Road. And all the Leeds fans wish him all the best across the Euros, along with Tyler Roberts as well, who's in the Wales camp, and a few other our players are out in the Euros, not forgetting obviously Calvin Phillips with the England squad. But they've played a game. I'm not sure which, can't remember if he was in a qualifier for this or in a game in a World Cup qualifier where they played up against Germany in the
World Cup qualifying it was.
I can't remember which one it was. And North Macedonia actually beat Germany in that game. And Ali, I saw one of the friendlies last Friday of North Macedonia's their game that they had last Friday, and North Macedonia played really, really well against Kazakhstan, won 4-0 in the end. Alioski opened the scoring, and then there was a few more goals in there. They had a few players rested for the tournament going into the opening with the friendlies that they had coming up. And from what I've seen on social media from Alioski, he's been posting a few videos up on his Facebook, his Instagram and Twitter from the North Macedonia camp, and everyone in the camp seems to be positive. The real buzz about them. Ilfi Yilmaz is another quality player who's playing his trade in Italy, Napoli as well. You mentioned Goran Pandev, he's another excellent player in there. Tchaikovsky as well. He's also Ivan Tchaikovsky, that is, who from AEK Larnac is another talented player. And if you can get the balls up to Goran Pandev and Tchaikovsky as well inside the area, and Alioski providing the crosses from the left, playing as a left wing back, which the North Macedonia tend to play him as a left wing back or a left winger in the games he's played for them, and mainly played left back part of last season for Leeds. Did Alioski, if he can supply the crosses and we can get Pandev on the end of him, could cause the Dutch and Austria and Ukraine a few problems, and I think North Macedonia will fancy the chances. If you just go back to the Leeds United's point toward last season against the big teams like Liverpool, Man United, Man City, Leeds felt that was a 3 games for them, and Alioski will probably take that mindset into this North Macedonia camp and say to his players, these are all free hits for us. We're not expected to do well. Go out there and show us what we can do. And it'll be interesting to see if Alioski takes some of the training methods he's learned under Bielsa into the training camp and put on to some of the players and get a few players with their own training methods in the small groups, when they're going into small groups. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. I'm watching them very, very closely, mainly for Alioski, see how well he does, but I'll be interested to see how all the new teams, North Macedonia, Finland, going in this tournament. It'll be very interesting how North Macedonia do, and I'll be looking forward to commentating on their second match in this group.
Well, it does feel like with North Macedonia, as you mentioned there, Elif Elmas plays for Napoli, a regular in their team. Feels like if he plays well, North Macedonia can get a few results on the board. They're a tough side to beat, and they won't be an easy team to play against for the Dutch, Ukraine, and last but not least, Austria, who play them in their first game. Of course, they're a team who have 21 of their 26-man squad playing in Germany for the likes of Frankfurt, Hoffenheim, and Bayer Leverkusen, just to name a few. Of course, they are a team based on real technical quality and possession. There are some names for you to remember. Marko Arnautovic, of course, now playing in China after years at West Ham and Stoke, of course. There's Watford's goalkeeper Daniel Bachmann in the team. Of course, the German-based players, the likes of Christoph Baumgartner and Stefan Poch, play their football for Hoffenheim. Stefan Leiner, of course, and... Stefan Leiner plays for Mönchengladbach, and then you've got the RB Leipzig pair of Konrad Leimer and Marcel Sabitzer. Of course, they're two very good technical players. In terms of Austria, as I said, they do rely on their midfield. They're very possession-based. It does seem to come through their midfield. And, of course, one person we've not mentioned is David Alaba, the Real Madrid newbie, of course, is going there on a free transfer. Managed by a German, Franco Foda, so he's obviously using the Bundesliga connections well. I'll pass this down to Jack. How do you see Austria's chances? Because there are some good names in there, good technical midfielders, and it does feel like, gauging the reaction amongst, what John Kane was saying and everybody else, that Group C is probably more wide open than maybe it looks on paper.
Yeah, I think it's quite a wide open group, and I agree with what John and Barry were saying before about the Netherlands. I do actually think they might actually struggle to get out of the group simply because of De Boer being in charge, and I think Austria are going to be one of the teams to benefit from that. The start against North Macedonia, so straight away you could get an easy 3 points on the board. Straight away, that's put you, well, you probably guaranteed at least third then. So, that might be enough. As we said, looking at the team, it's all about the midfield, isn't it? I mean, lots of good Bundesliga players there, like Baumgartner and Lazaro, Sabitzer, who looks like he's potentially coming to the Premier League this summer. He is leaving Leipzig. So there's some great players there. It maybe, again, a bit like Switzerland. Denmark struggling for a striker. You got Arnautovic up front who has done it. He has scored quite a few goals, got 26 goals for Austria. So, it's a decent record for him. It's all about Alaba, I suppose. Where do you play him? Do you play him at left back? Do you play him at centre back? Do you play him in centre midfield? And remember, in the last international tournament Austria win, he was playing in centre midfield. And he really struggled, actually, which was quite unusual considering Pep used to play him then. He was really, really good. So it's interesting to see how they do. But I do think in that group, they've got a chance because of the way the fixtures work out as well. The fact that they play North Macedonia first, I think gives them a really good chance to get nice 3 points on the board and then take it from there. So I think Austria will get through. I don't know where they'll finish, but I do think they'll get through because I think they've got enough quality in the squad to secure a place in the next round.
Well, absolutely. It does maybe feel like, having gauged the reactions, of course, that Austria could be table toppers in Group C. But, of course, have your say on our various social media platforms. If you're watching on Twitter, then, of course, try and leave us comments that we'll try and get read out. If you're watching us on Twitch or YouTube, then get involved. Put your comments in and we'll try and read them out. And get our commentators and pundits involved in the discussion even more. So we now move on to Group D, and of course this is where the three lions come into this. This is always an interesting discussion. England, Croatia, Scotland and Czech Republic are in Euro 2020, Group D. Of course, England kick off against Croatia, a repeat of the World Cup semi-final 3 years ago, in which England lost in extra time. I will go on to England in just a minute, but Croatia, Nicholas, Jack mentioned earlier, and it was a very good point, that they aren't the side what they used to be 3 years ago. A lot of their more experienced and older heads have gone. Subasic, Mandzukic, there's still Luka Modric in there, Ivan Perisic, people like that, Simon Vasalko and so forth. Do you still maybe look at Croatia and think that they could be, potentially a solid outfit and still, do as well as they have in the European Championships before and the World Cup 3 years ago? I mean, you'll be covering their game against the Czech Republic in their second round match on the 18th of June. So having looked at Croatia, do you think that there is a good chance that they could go far in this tournament? Seem to have had a bit of a technical hitch there.
Yeah.
So I'll just see if anything's happening. I'll go back to Nicholas in just a sec.
Wait.
I
It's
working now. That's fine. Lovely. That's lovely.
Anyway,
Fire away.
Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. I was just saying that given that many of Croatia's experienced players have now gone, as you said, they could be in for a bit of a tough challenge against England. But given the players that are still on there, including Modric, I reckon that they could hold England close and beat them like they did in the World Cup. But I think Croatia are a good, solid side. I mean, I would definitely see them in the sort of the top two of the group stages, up with England. I personally think they'll probably go as far as the quarterfinals.
Not a bad prediction to say. Nonetheless, of course, they do possess the likes of Marcelo Brozovic, Andrej Kramaric, Mateo Kovacic as well, of course, who's just fresh from winning the Champions League with Chelsea, of course. And Josip Brekalo has been linked with various Premier League clubs. I think Leeds and West Ham are certainly sniffing around his signature, the man who plays his club football in Germany for VfL Wolfsburg. Let's look at Scotland, their first major tournament in 23 years. Of course, they've won it in agonising fashion against Serbia. John Kane, Scotland obviously come into these championships finally getting through the idea of getting into the major tournament. That's the hurdle, the mental block, wasn't it, of getting through. They'd been close many times in those 23 years, but they'd been really far away on some occasions as well. Steve Clarke's only had around about 2 years in the job, and he's had a lot of games thrown at him, but he seems to have found a way, found a team that's tough to break down and very good on the break, quick players including Christie and McGregor and so forth, and of course Che Adams, who is of course going to be leading the line, we think, for Scotland during these championships. Do you see them potentially not just getting into third place, which is vital as much as anything else, but even more into second place, because they're a tough nut to crack, aren't they?
They are indeed. I think one of the saddest things in the world of football in general is some names never get mentioned and gets enough credit as much as Steve Clarke has done throughout his coaching career. I think he's been magnificent being a coach when he was at Chelsea and other teams in Scotland and what have you. And I think he's actually will literally generate Scotland and put it in the right direction, even if it doesn't work out in this tournament. But Scotland need to stick with Steve Clarke because he's got a massive, great ability try to get the best out of this Scottish team. And you look at the Scotland team, I mean, they've got players which we all know, you know, some people seem to forget about, like Scott McTominay, who's been fantastic for Man United this season, like you mentioned, Shay Adams, Billy Gilmore, the young guy from Chelsea. You know, these players are seems to have forgotten that actually they do play for Scotland. And obviously you've got some of the old players, like got Craig Gordon, you know, who's still in goal, and David Marshall. So they're not just any names; they are really good names. And I think with the good direction and the experience of Steve Clarke, which I emphasize so much on because he is one of the people who doesn't get enough credit in the world of football, I think Scotland will not be an easy target for anyone in this group.
They certainly won't be. And of course, when you've got Andy Robertson and Kieran Tierney, two very well-known players in the Premier League, anything is possible, of course.
Yeah,
and they do tend to play with the three at the back system. And of course, it has worked well for them in qualifying for these championships. So, of course, anything is possible, as Jack is now going to make a point about Scotland.
No, that's their problem. That's their problem. Their best players are left backs who play in the exact same position. So you've got to play one of them at centre back. It's usually Tierney, and then you've got to have Robertson at left wing back. And I just feel they lose something because you can't play your two best players in their natural position. Also, if you've got Grant Hanley as your starting centre back, there's some problems because he struggled badly in the Premier League with Norwich. He struggled in the Championship with Newcastle. He has done well in the Championship with Norwich. I don't know. I just think that Scotland is great. They're there, but I do think they'll finish bottom of the group because, as I said, their two best players play in the same position defensively. Yes, you can hide Grant Hanley in the middle of the back five, but overall, I do think Scotland will finish bottom of the group, and I'm not even sure they'll get a point, to be fair.
Very, very bold indeed from Jack there. But do you not look at their midfield, John McGinn? You know, you've got Ryan Christie, very, very quick. I mean, John Fleck has caught COVID, which he did get last week, of course, so he will be okay during the tournament. But there is still some good players in there. It's a solid defence, built to counter-attack. You know, they could hurt Croatia, Czech Republic, and even England for that fact, shouldn't they?
No, I see your point. I mean, I like John McGinn. I think he's an excellent player. Box to box, got great legs, can pass the ball well, comes up with the odd spectacular goal as well, doesn't he? Especially for Scotland. I like Stuart Armstrong as well. He's brilliant for Southampton. They do have some really good players. I think the problem then comes to when he's coming up front, because you've got Shea Adams, who had a strong season for Southampton. Then you either play out on a Lyndon Dykes alongside him, or Ryan Fraser, who is quick, but he did struggle at Newcastle last season. Ryan Christie didn't have a great season for Celtic either. So who do you partner with him? Because they like to play with the two. So I feel that the problem is getting the ball to Adams. Then what happens then? Because their midfield is good, but then how are you getting your goals? Adams has only got one goal. I know he's only had 3 caps. So that's my thing for Scotland.
And of course, another name in there is Kevin Nisbet. Of course, he's had a fine season with Hibernian in the SPL. So he's someone who's been linked with a move to England. Whether or not that materialises in the summer remains to be seen. Their opponents at Hampden Park, of course, which is another stadium hosting games. I do apologise, any Scottish fans listening. I did forget that Hampden Park was hosting some games, so do forgive me. Please don't shoot me down. They take on the Czech Republic in their opening game. Russ will be covering the game for us on the commentary hub. That's on Monday. It almost feels like that game early on, Scotland-Czech Republic, is pretty much going to be deciding where their fates lie in this group, isn't it? I mean, Czech Republic, they got so Czech, so foul. Of course, the 2 West Ham players have been so key for them this season and them finishing in the Europa League places. That feels like already that's got a big game with big implications on it at Hampden Park on Monday, doesn't it?
It does, Matt, yes, and I think whoever wins that one will finish third in the group. And I think if I look at both of the squads for the European Championships, I'm looking at them both right now as I speak. They've got, if I look in the Czech Republic squad first, Koufal, Sojcek from West Ham, Mati Vidra from Burnley, also Thomas Kalas from Bristol City, who's played in the top flight in previous seasons, and then they've got people who have played in the Bundesliga, in Schick up front, and So they've got quite a few big players in the squad. I've Czech Republic, and then if you look at the Scotland side, as Jack Riley pointed out, the two best players, possibly for me, are the two defenders in Andy Robertson and Kieran Tierney. Plus, you don't know what Lyndon Dykes is going to turn up in the tournament. You don't know which Lyndon Dykes is going to turn up in, who's going to be performing, if he's going to perform like he has done in the league season for there, like he has done in the league for Queen's Park Rangers. But another player who we've probably not mentioned just yet is one of the defenders, another defender. I know we've mentioned two already, but a central defender who has played in the back three at times this season under Marcelo Bielsa, Leeds United. That is, as you probably guess, I'm referring to Leeds United captain Liam Cooper. And this season, Cooper, when we first went up, a lot of Leeds fans called him League One Liam, but as the season's progressed, alongside Diego Llorente, proved into one of the biggest, best defenders of the back. Unless he's injured, he's kept a good partnership with Diego Llorente. So if he can form a good partnership with one of the centre backs in the tournament, maybe Scott McKenna, maybe who's done well at Nottingham Forest last season, and they can have Avatini at the other side of him as well, and to help him out with, and have Cooper in the middle. That could potentially work. And before we move on, man, we've got a few people who's commented in on the chat, which I just want to say hello to. I want to say hello to Malk, who's tuned in this evening. Hopefully you're doing okay. Also to Trevor Sports as well. He says it's coming home unless Turkey. This is all the teams in the tournament. Says it's coming home unless all the other teams play better than England. That's his prediction. Also, a friend from Trevor Sports who's tuned in, Jonathan Abequake. Hopefully you're doing okay, mate, and thanks for tuning into this. And also, Jacob OC, thank you very much for tuning in. He says, come on, England. And if you look at, just to give a mention to them, but if you go back to the point that you made, I think it's going to be a good game. And whoever wins this match, I think, will finish third in the group. And I'm predicting Scotland to nick this one against Czech Republic. I think Scotland may just have the edge over Czech Republic because some of the players for Czech Republic, from what I've seen in the qualifiers for the World Cup that they've had in the warm-up games, they've not performed to the certain level that we know they can do.
Well, they have beaten the Czech Republic within the last 12 months as well, haven't they, Scotland under Steve Clarke? So will history repeat itself on Monday? You can find out with the Commentary Hub on Monday with Russ Vernon, bringing you the commentary of that. And last but not least, we've got England in this group, of course. They take on Croatia. European Championship fever has hit the country once more. And, of course, it could coincide, hopefully, with a good performance with nice weather to match. Barry, you've been sat there very patiently. You've not said a lot for a while. Quite a good thing, actually. No, I'm joking. Starting with... In terms of England, we've spoken about the lineup briefly. Obviously, the nation always gets sucked in with England games. It practically does, to some extent, not exaggerating, but really stop the country, doesn't it, when England do play? The millions tune in the pubs or wherever they are. How far, in your eyes, do this England team go? Because potentially what await England, if they win it, is third place in Group F, which is either Germany, Portugal, or France, which we'll get to. And if they do finish lower than first, potentially Spain in the next group come up next. So they're going to have to face one of these big sides to win. And it feels like the mentality at the moment with some English fans is we need the easiest route possible to be successful. You're going to have to beat these sides to win it, aren't you?
I don't buy into that. But whoever's put in front of us, on paper we could beat anyone in this competition, England. But are we going to win it? I don't know. You look at the quality going forward. There's an abundance of great players at Gareth's disposal. We can sit here all night trying to pick a team. I'll go with the team that Gareth picks on Saturday, and probably won't agree with it. But I do think the two Chelsea lads will be the two fullbacks in my eyes. I think Rhys James is for me. I think he's had a tremendous season, strong and quick, and Chilwell ahead of Shaw. But these are great debates to have. Phil Foden, where'd you fit him in? Jack Grealish. it's a great problem to have for Gareth. He's got to get it right, and he's got to manage that squad and its expectations. And there's a lot of players there. There's one or two that have been carrying the knocks, the Jordan Hendersons, the Harry Maguires, but a lot of these players have played a lot of football, so he's got to manage them correctly, and he's got to hit the ground running, because remember, he's just had 2 warm-up games where he's been playing players that are not even in the 26. So because of the Champions League and the Europa League commitments of the clubs and the players that have been playing in the final just a week or two before, so that's not his fault. But he's got to hit the ground running. He's not had any warm-ups. It's going to be tough against Croatia. On paper, they should go all the way, but don't we say this every 2 years or so? And every 2 years they break our hearts, and they give us heartache and tears. And I've kind of grown old enough to kind of prepare myself for it. But one day, you never know. 1966 might come around again. Is this our best chance ever? I think we've had a couple of, on paper, stronger all-round sides. 96, we had a team of leaders then, and Gaza and Shearer and Sheringham. What a great opportunity. And if only Gaza's leg was an inch longer, he could have reached that ball and put it in the net and would have beaten the Czechs in the final. And it's all about character. And I heard Teddy Sheringham, actually, ironically, in an interview this week, say, have they got the Tony Adams, the leaders like they had with Tony Adams, and they had 2 or 3 leaders in there. Shearer was a great leader. Paul Ince. We haven't got those type of leaders. There's going to be moments. He said this, and I'm only quoting on what Teddy Sheringham said. There's going to be sticky moments in this competition. Who is going to dig us out? Maybe a Jordan Henderson, but who's going to dig us out of those holes? And that's a very, very good point, and a very valid point. I'm not 100% sure we're the finished article defensively, and have we got a leader? That's the question. I'll go with Teddy on that one. But going forward, if I was any other team in this competition, looking at what England have got going forward, I'd be petrified, especially if it clicks when the time comes in the next couple of weeks.
Well, it is frightening, the attacking depth that England have got. I mean, Harry Kane's up front. You can easily put Dominic Calvert-Lewin on. You've got Jack Grealish, of course, Phil Foden, Marcus Rashford, Raheem Sterling, of course, who's actually still by the numbers had a very good season. And it does almost feel like managing England is the impossible job, just like the Graham Taylor documentary was all those years ago. Barry and John Kane can certainly probably remember that and relate to what I've just sort of said. So, John, I'll go to you. I mean, obviously, Barry spoke about the attacking quality that we've got, which is a very good point to make. I mean, in terms of the depth, it's got to be right up there with France in terms of what they can bring in. Could possibly even say maybe Portugal, and even maybe slightly better than Germany. But defensively is the real issue. Gary Neville made the point a few months ago, didn't he? And he said that, if Harry Maguire comes out of that England team, it does feel like it all seems to fall apart. And there's even been talks this week that Luke Shaw might be playing as a third centre-back on the left-hand side. Now, would that be something that you would consider a real shock? I mean, it certainly would do, but could you see the reasons and the good intentions behind that?
I can see the reason why he's doing it. And let's not forget, a few games ago when Gareth Southgate did play Kyle Walker and Kieran Trippier in the same lineup, and Kyle Walker was dragged into centre-back and Trippier run on the right-hand side. Now, he can easily do that with Luke Shaw. The problem with England, personally, and this comes from the love of the country and the love of the team, and I wanted to do well. So I'm going to be critical. That is how my love is going to come out. That team is very similar to the Dutch side. It's very good, of great quality players. But I don't think, especially when you watch the game against Austria, that game is not really playing as a team. And I think you need a sort of a manager who can actually bring them players together properly and choose the right players who can lead up. Yes, we have got great players going forward, but we are talking about, with all due respect to kind of Cody and people like that, they are good players, but they're not really, I don't think they're really up to international level players when it comes to that defense. And the only one that I would say probably that I'm excited to seeing in that whole lineup of defense is Reece James. Because Reece James has been fantastic for Chelsea. He's just like Steve Clarke, as I said earlier, he doesn't get a lot of mention, but the work rate that he provides for England in that right-hand side for Chelsea is just brilliant. And I love watching him there. And I think he's got to be one of the stars of the England squad, regardless what the result's going to be. Reece James, you're going to see him there in forwards and backwards, helping out. But again, you got Reece James and you got Kieran Trippier, and then you got maybe Kyle Walker. So you look at the squad, is it really balanced? I don't think so. I know Jack mentioned about the left-footed players in the Scottish team. We've got too many right-footed players here in the defence. No, that is actually a problem, really. And it's not really, it's great that we actually got people who can play in very similar positions. But when it comes to trying to organise the back four or back three, shall we say, it's going to be a very hard task for Gareth Southgate. I would love, just quickly, Matt, sorry. I would love for England to progress and win the tournament, but I think this team needs to change manager. Sorry to say this. And this team, we can actually get the same similar players, change one or two, and it'll be ready for the World Cup rather than actually for this tournament.
So it might feel like, gauging the reaction, that it might be a bridge too far for this England side this time round, but maybe the World Cup in Qatar in only about 18 months' time, that could be where it does strike gold for England. And of course, Reece James is a very good person that you mentioned there. The Champions League final around about 2 weeks ago, or just over that, he was exceptional in terms of keeping the Manchester City attack quiet down his right-hand side, played at right wing-back, very comfortable there, as did Ben Chilwell, so maybe their places are secure in that team. Let's move on to Group E now then. Of course, the European champions of 2008 and 2012, Spain, are alongside Sweden, Slovakia and Poland in this group. Of course, Spain, will be playing their matches at the Estadio La Cartuja in Seville. And then, of course, there is St. Petersburg in there as well. Due to Dublin dropping out, it means that St. Petersburg has got an extra couple of games in there to coincide with, of course, Russia playing in there and Copenhagen in Group B. I'll go to Russ first on Spain. It's not quite the same Spain side of yesteryear. We had the greats of Xavi, Iniesta, David Silva. Fernando Torres in 2008 was electrifying for Spain. Obviously, as well, Sergio Ramos is a real surprise name not to be included, probably the biggest name out of any squad not to be included for that fact. The most record cap player not involved. Luis Enrique, though, has done the treble at Barcelona, very much a favourite with attacking football. Would you rate Spain's chances? Because they've almost gone under the radar, haven't they, in terms of, people fancying them to do well at this tournament. And, of course, as well, they get home advantage.
Yes, they do, Matt. And for me, if I look at this Spain squad, I think comparing to the squads that they've had in previous years, when I first saw that there was no Sergio Ramos in the squad, I saw a lot of people saying was surprised he has not fetched him in. But if you look at Ramos' season compared to, say, Aymeric Laporte and Diego Llorente, for instance, who are the two, Llorente in particular was the one who's, I think, Jose Enrique said Diego Llorente was the one who was the one ahead of Ramos in his pick for this squad, the Leeds United centre-back. If you look at the two performances for the majority of this season, Diego Llorente, since he's had a win in the side, has been up here in his performances, whereas with Sergio Ramos, he's been down near the bottom. He's had too many mistakes and he didn't play towards the end of the back end of the season due to COVID issues and other issues. But with Llorente, he's featured quite a number of times this season and done fairly well throughout the campaign with Leeds. So I can see him doing fairly well in the tournament. I'm not going to say how far I think they're going to get just yet, but I can see them finishing in the top two of their group. But I think if you look at the Spain squad, yes, they're missing a few players that they've had in the past who's now moved on and retired and gone into management or punditry, but the players that they've got in the squad this time around, they've got very good players in there. One surprise inclusion for me was Adama Traore from Wolves. I didn't think he had that good of a season the Molyneux side last campaign. He was mainly on the bench towards the back end of the season due to other players performing better than him, and he was my only surprise inclusion in the Spain squad, if I'm honest, Matt.
No, that's a very good point that you've made. Of course, Spain have had a bit of a disruption in their camp. Two players, Sergio Busquets and Diego Llorente, have tested positive for COVID. But as I understand, Diego Llorente has had 2 negative tests, so it means he is able to join up with the squad if he does pass a 3rd test. But they have got a parallel squad just training away from the Spanish side. So any more players drop out due to COVID-related issues, they are ready and waiting to step in. The likes of Kepa, Aditha Balaga, Rodrigo from Leeds, and of course Oscar Mingueza are just 3 players that have been included within that. Sweden are their opponents in match day 1. Of course, Sweden have always been renowned to be a solid side. No Zlatan Ibrahimovic this year, though, due to a knee injury. Nicholas, you'll be looking at Sweden during the tournament in their group stage campaign against Slovakia. Jana Andersson side reached the quarterfinals last year. There's a lot of emerging talent with Sweden. Dejan Kulusevski, Robin Quaison, Matthias Svanberg in particular. How do you rate Sweden's chances? Because they're a solid side, very streetwise and very difficult to play against. And as opposition, funnily enough, that Spain know a lot about, given they've played them and will be playing them after the tournament itself.
Solid as they are, Matt, I see them going as far as the quarterfinals. They'll be very lucky if they get into the semi-finals, in my view. But I reckon they'll be sort of there or thereabouts in the group. Whether they'll actually top it, I don't know. But I'd be very surprised if they eclipse Spain.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point that you've made, of course. But there are some good individual players for Sweden. The mantle's got to be took in terms of who scored goals. I did cover their match with Finland a few weeks ago, and Robin Quaison did impress me. And Dejan Kulusevski is a player that is performing well. Victor Claesson, who plays for Krasnodar in Russia, he's a talented player as well for Sweden. And of course, there is a lot of older heads in their team. Seb Larsson, Andreas Gvankvist, Mikael Lustig, as much as anything else of Sweden, you know, over the years have kept a lot of those same sort of players. And Barry, do you think when it comes to a tournament like that, a nation that isn't well known for football and kind of keeps a lot of the same players in the same squads throughout the tournaments, do you think those new players coming in will really benefit from their input and their value and their tournament experience, that they can give them that guidance to how to deal with the pressure of, you know, being pretty much in the watching eye of the whole whole of European football and the whole of the fans as well? Have a bit of a problem with Barry's microphone there.
Muted, sorry.
There we go.
So you didn't. I didn't swear during that either. So yeah, I was just about to say there's a good mixture of youth and experience in the Swedish squad. You know, looking at it, I think there's a little bit of quality in there. You know, are they going to get out this group? You know, personally, I think the firepower of Lewandowski might just lean it towards Poland for me. But you know, it's a new era for these youngsters coming through. It's a little bit like Belgium. You know, you go back to the group that Belgium are in. Now, after this tournament, you're going to see a big turnaround, and you're probably going to find that a little bit with the Swedish city and Andreas Granqvist. You're not going to see him in another major tournament, are you? You know, Bengtsson and the likes and Svensson, Berg. You know, the spine of that team is a very, very experienced but very old squad. You know, the 3 goalkeepers are all in their 30s. You know, there's got to be an evolution, if not now, then after the tournament. And you know, are they good enough to get out of the group? I'm not so sure they are, to be honest. The Swedes, for me.
Do you fancy 3rd place for Sweden? Perhaps, maybe get one of those 6 places that are up for grabs.
Yeah, potentially. You know, you never know with these, do you? You know, it's how they click. You know, we talked about. I saw Austria play England in a friendly. You know, going back. Sorry, I'm flitting in between groups, but you know, we talked about Purring, how they've got loads of Bundesliga experience, but it didn't really impress me when they played England the other week. Too much. I didn't think they were that great. It all depends how they perform. You know, it's picking the right team, the right players clicking, somebody coming through from nowhere, a young player that suddenly bursts onto the scene, there's going to be one or two of them. Who are they going to be playing for? That's the big question. But for me, I don't think Sweden have got enough to finish in the top two. Third, every chance, I would imagine, with Slovakia probably finishing bottom.
Well, of course, we now move on to Slovakia, and they're a side who, of course, boasts Marek Hamsik, a very well-known player, given he's the record appearance holder for his national team and their record goal scorer. The one thing that plagues Slovakia for me is the lack of a front man. There's not enough goals in their team. The likes of Bujenik, who plays for Feyenoord, Duris, who plays his football in Cyprus, and, of course, that really is something that plagues them. So, again, it kind of begs the question, where are the goals going to come from? And Stefan Tarkovic, I think, will certainly be looking at that. But they've got some good players in there. Their midfielders of Juraj Kučka and Stanislav Lobotka could be key players for them defensively. They are quite solid, like a lot of these sides in the tournament. Nicholas, you'll be covering them during it as well. Slovakia are a side who, aren't going to be fancied by a lot. It does feel like they are going to finish bottom of this group very comfortably. Do you see hope for them to potentially nick third place? Because, they nicked third with Russia, England and Wales a few years ago in the last European Championships, didn't they?
They may well have done in the past, but I don't see Slovakia faring that particularly well this year. Because as I mentioned earlier, Sweden have a solid back line, so it'll be tough for Slovakia to get past the likes of Sweden, and of course, as we know, Poland have really star quality players up front. So I don't think Slovakia is going to go past the group stage.
It does feel like Slovakia won't get out of last place in that group. It does feel like it's pretty nailed on, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see how they fare, of course. And their opponents in match day one are Poland, who they, of course, have been coached by Portuguese coach, I should say, rather, in Paulo Sousa, a man who managed Queen's Park Rangers, Swansea and Leicester in England alone. His last club job was at Bordeaux before he took the Poland job. There's one name that stands out. It is Robert Lewandowski. He really does carry the hopes of a nation. He is the poster boy of Polish football. You could arguably say probably the greatest footballer to ever have come out of that country. Of course, they had the likes of Grzegorz Lato and Zbigniew Boniek, who was a Champions League winner of Juventus. I know Barry and John will probably certainly have heard of that name, given his exploits with Juventus back in the mid-'80s. John, we know about Lewandowski and all his quality. It does almost feel like that he's got to turn up if Poland are really going to be considered to getting really far in the tournament, doesn't it? I mean, they did last time, though, get to the quarterfinals and were penalties away from the semi-finals.
Absolutely. I mean, regarding the Lewandowski being the best player that comes out from there, I think I'll go for Boniek. I think Boniek was brilliant for me from the 80s. He was fantastic. But obviously, Lewandowski is also phenomenal. But if I have to choose, I'll go for Boniek. Poland reminds me of Tottenham, funny enough. Tottenham Hotspur in the last season, when Harry Kane, the main guy, scored goals and trying to build and move the team forward by scoring goals and do his best, but you get the rest of the team not really good enough. Poland is exactly the same thing. You're going to have Lewandowski, who's going to create, who's going to score goals for Poland, but the rest of the team is not good enough. And I think that's what's going to fail Poland this time. You will see Lewandowski's going to try, like we've seen Harry Kane was trying for Tottenham, but he would not be good enough, and he would not get Poland any further than even probably the next round.
It does almost feel like, doesn't it, with Lewandowski? Yes, he can, basically every chance he gets, he puts in the back of the net, but he needs players around him. He needs to support into it. And if he doesn't get that and that's stopped, he's quiet. He's non-existent in the game. So it does maybe feel like Spain, for me, do win this group. Poland, Sweden fighting out for second and third. Whoever gets there is pretty too close to call. Slovakia pretty much at the bottom of that group. I think that's the overriding feeling with that one. And last but not least...
Sorry, Matt. Just regarding about Spain, just quickly. Obviously, yeah. I'm here in Spain, and I spoke to so many people, Spanish people, regarding their national team, and it's very interesting to hear what they say. They're very happy with the manager. They're very happy with, in general terms, with the squad. They think they lack of one centre forward to win them the tournament, and everyone more or less in agreement in Morata is not even good enough player for a club. a big club, let alone for a national team. And I think everyone thinks if Morata was exchanged for a different player who does score goals, Spain would have had a chance. And the Spanish faith in winning this tournament is not as high as some people think. And that's mainly because forward, up front, Morata is not really a reliable goal scorer.
No, I mean, that is
Morata for Golden
very
Boot.
point. Commentators
put it
curse
down.
potentially again.
Yeah, they've got Gerard Moreno though, who had a very, very strong season with Villarreal. I'd be interested to see if they do decide to maybe go. Say Morata starts first game, doesn't fire. Do they take the risk and throw Moreno in there, because in the form he's in, you'd think he deserves a chance. And if the Spanish public don't think Morata's good enough, why not give Moreno a go?
And Morata, actually, funnily enough, going into international football, has a goal nearly every other game. 40 caps, 19 goals. It's not a bad goal record to have. So he will probably lead the line. But, of course, Alvaro Morata is always going to be one of those footballers that's never really going to get enough of a crowd to really believe in him, truthfully. Now we come on to Group F, which is unbelievable when you consider 3 of the 4 sides in it. You've got France, the world champions, Portugal, the European champions, Germany, the 2014 World Cup winners, and unfortunately Hungary. So they've been dealt a really bad hand in this group. Now, I'm not trying to disrespect Marco Rossi and Hungary, of course, who do host some games at the Puskás Arena in Budapest. So there is always that opportunity. And, of course, it does feel like Hungary will have a large quantity of fans inside their stadium more than anything else, due to the fact, of course, they played Republic of Ireland the other day and caught a few glimpses of that, and there was certainly a lot of fans inside that stadium. It is too close to call, Group F. Obviously, I'll go to Jack first. Let's look at the world champions, France. We saw a little bit of their game against Bulgaria on Tuesday. Okay, it wasn't the best of opponents in Bulgaria, but France looked slick. They look sharp. They look right on it. And at times, they look pretty flamboyant and pretty cocky. Of course, they've got Portugal and Germany, which I don't think they'll have the same attitude quite as much about. But there's just so much quality. And with Benzema getting added in there, it does just feel like they've just gone up and up and up, haven't they? And they're pretty much they've added that quality to what they had in their last major tournament win in Russia 2018. It's
just a scary team, isn't it? I mean, we watched that game, and yes, it wasn't against a great side, but they went for Benzema and Mbappe up front, and it was like they'd played together for 10 years. Their link-up play was on another level. It was telepathic. It was ridiculous. I thought they might struggle, but I know Benzema went off, but, if he's fine and they start again up front together, and that's not even counting their wingers, Kingsley Coman, Ousmane Dembele, you're not even playing them at that point. You've still got them to use off the bench. It's a ridiculous side. Pogba becomes he just turns into a different player when he plays for France. He did have a strong season for Man United, in fairness, but when he plays for France, he just becomes a different player. Tolisso was fantastic. Kante was absolutely brilliant as well. It's just got the blend of power, quality, energy, experience, pace. They've got everything. They've got winners in the side. They've got Giroud. They've got people from the world. They've got a lot of the World Cup squad that won it together. They obviously went very close in the Euros as well, which I think obviously helped them for the World Cup. They'll want to obviously win it this time to, forget about what happened. The only thing that you could say is a potential weakness is that their centre-backs love being on the ball and love bringing the ball out. So if you catch them high up the field, the centre-back loses the ball high up the field, then maybe you've got a chance. But that is their only weakness, because the way they control the game, the way they play through the lines, and then the way Griezmann plays for France as well, he turns into a different player as well. I know he is injured. He will miss the first game. So it's just a ridiculous team. And you've got to say they're well set up by playing Germany and Portugal early on as well, because then they've already played arguably 2 of the other best teams in the tournament before any of the other teams have played anyone even remotely similar. So if they come through them with a win and a draw, for example, I think France will go on and win the tournament quite comfortably.
Well, the secret of their success in Russia was the fact that they just controlled games. They were just so good at it. Their game management was exceptional. Obviously, you've got other unsung heroes. I mean, Benjamin Pavard, when he plays for the national team, is something else. I mean, he's not a well-known figure at Bayern Munich, but when he plays for the French national team in the World Cup, he was impressive. Lucas Hernandez, another one. He looks really, really strong again for France. His game has taken up those few extra notches. So there is a lot of hype about France. And of course, when you've got Benzema, who's just been added to the team, not featured for 6 years due to a lot of controversy and, of course, a scandal back in France, which really did sort of put his international future in serious doubt. He has recovered, got his head down, and done a lot of good hard work to get back into the fold, and more importantly, start under Didier Deschamps. And, of course, he did go off against Bulgaria, but luckily it doesn't feel like it is too serious an injury.
Yeah.
Their opponents on match day 1 are Germany. Barry, they had a shocking World Cup in terms of their defence of it, of course, going out to South Korea, Mexico and Sweden. Joachim Löw is stepping down at the end of the tournament. It does feel like maybe he shouldn't be in charge given their recent record and the fact that they are not as feared as what they were. So do you maybe think that they might go into it feeling quite happy about not quite being the favourites? This is a very different Germany side to the ones we have seen. They've still got Neuer. Hummels and Müller obviously got recalled back to the squad. So obviously Joachim Löw has realised he does need a bit of tournament experience in there. But do you think maybe the fact that they aren't considered as strong favourites might just give them a better chance of faring well this time round?
Yeah, the expectations not there with a change of manager. It's a little bit of a transition, and they're in the group of death, as I haven't heard it called the group of death yet, but it is, isn't it? It's the group of death. We've got to have a group of death in a major tournament, otherwise it's not a major tournament. This is a tough old group. I mean, it's a cracking game to start with, isn't it? Listen, I'm looking at the squad now. I mean, it's a great list of players. It's not the strongest German squad ever by any means, but there's quality sprinkled throughout. Is there enough to win a tournament? I'm not so sure, but I've said that about a lot of teams tonight, haven't I? Thomas Müller. I come back to Lewandowski, Kane. It's not a lot of teams that we've mentioned that have got that natural goal scorer. Lewandowski, you're going to give him the ammunition. Kane will probably get the ammunition. Give the likes of Thomas Müller the ammunition. We know what he can do, and scoring goals is everything in tournaments like this, and I think he's that go-to player, isn't he? 102 caps, 39 goals. He knows how to score goals. There's more to his game than scoring goals, and I think getting the best out of him at the age of 31, perhaps his final tournament. Maybe he might just squeeze the World Cup next year as well. But it's getting the ball to him. But they've certainly got the quality there to go to the further stages of the tournament. Can they win it? I'm not so sure. I don't think this is not the best German side ever, but expectations, you never know. You just never know.
You do never know indeed, and the European Championships have told us down the years of Denmark and Greece winning that anything is possible. And of course, Germany, you still have to say, even though they do have well-known names, they are still slightly side to fear, even though maybe their star power and their fear might have just maybe dwindled over the last few years or so. The European champions, though, Portugal. Of course, one thing that was their secret of their success in 2016 was their unbelievable defence, their rear guard. Their defence was so strong. Pepe was a man mountain at the back. Jose Font, who was playing for Southampton and barely even getting a look in round about that time under Ronald Koeman. But of course, in that time, they have brought an emergence of some seriously exciting young talent coming into their team. The likes of Joao Felix coming in, Joao Cancelo, Andre Silva, Bernardo Silva, Bruno Fernandes, who of course is still 26 in the season he's had at Man United. He's coming into the tournament on serious fire. Of course, as well, the likes of Ruben Neves, Diogo Jota. It is a Portugal team sprinkled with talent, and arguably you've got probably the greatest of all time in the modern era in Cristiano Ronaldo in there. Mike Harneman, as you can see, is down. I'll bring him in just a minute or two. I'll just let him get a little bit more settled in as he's come in a little bit late. But I'll throw this one to John. Of course, Portugal a few years ago, they weren't exciting when they won the tournament. 3 draws in their 3 group games. Drew against Poland, beat Wales, and then they wait in Croatia 120 minutes, and the same against France. They weren't pretty, but there's a slightly different feel about that Portugal team, even though a lot of the way they played in 2016 is still there. How do you rate their chances? Do you feel as though they are a lot better equipped than what they were 5 years ago? Or do you think that maybe the expectation might be just too big on quite a, in essence, geographically, a very small country?
It is a very small country, and but you look at their squad, like you said, it's a fantastic squad. It's probably, for me, is the best squad in the whole tournament. And I know it's too early to say for the program, but they are my tip to retain the tournament because they play really, really good football. Yeah, like you said, not the most entertaining game, but they stick to the task. And I watched them against Israel a couple of days ago, and they beat them 4-0. And it wasn't pretty, like you said, but they got the job done, and that's what you need. And they've got covers right from the top, right start from the goalkeeper all the way down to the strikers. They've got all this mix of experience and youngsters that are coming up. And someone like Ruben Diaz, what he done for Manchester City, and I'm saying it as a Spurs fan, and I know I should be saying Harry Kane should have got the PFA Player of the Year, but Ruben Diaz deserved it because the minute he got into that Man City, he stabilised that defence so beautifully. And I think he's going to be a massive asset for Portugal with the likes, like you said, Bruno Fernandes, Robin Neves, and of course, Cristiano Ronaldo. And Cristiano Ronaldo, I know people say he's getting old and he's probably too old for that sort of tournaments, but he's got the winning mentality. And how many players now who are back in from 4 or 5 years ago now when they won the tournament, most of them have got that winning mentality, and they're able to believe that they can actually do this again. And I don't think they will progress from this tournament. I think they're going to go ahead and win it.
See, I have to agree with you, John. I mean, I am blowing the idea of predictions, which are going to come later on, but I think Portugal are going to win it again. I think they're stronger, they're better. Defensively, it's there. Attacking-wise, it's frightening. We talk about France's lineup. You've got Joao Felix, who costs over £100 million. Bernardo Silva, Fernandes, as I said, there's a team brimming with so much quality. And of course, they reached the under-21 European Championship final. So in a few years' time, there's even more talent coming through in that team. Of course, they were beaten by Germany in the final just a few days ago. And then there's the little minnows in the group. Hungary, of course, actually were minnows a few years ago, but not to this scale this time round. Of course, they've lost their best player, Dominic Szoboszlai, who, of course, has been ruled out, the RB Leipzig player, one of the most highly rated players in this Hungary, well, probably the best Hungary player. And obviously a lot of people, pundits, were quite excited to watch him. Nicholas, you'll be watching the Hungarians during the tournament. And yes, there's not a lot of names in there, but one thing about them is that this is an incredibly tight-knit squad. Doesn't change a lot in terms of the players coming in. There's a lot of players in their 30s. They've really got to be smart with their selection pool. And, of course, they have had quite a good international build-up to this. Of course, they got promoted, actually, to the Nations League Group A. And, of course, they beat Iceland, who are a very solid nation, to reach the European Championship. So maybe they won't be as, the whipping boys as many people think they will be under that tag, will they?
No, they most certainly won't be. I mean, Hungary did reasonably well in Euro 2016. I believe they got to the last 16.
Yes, they did. Belgium beat them. Yeah.
Anyway, but like you say, Hungary have got like a good tight formation that they can use to their advantage. Whether they'll actually work, I don't really know. But on paper, you wouldn't fancy them against Portugal, France, and Germany. But as they showed in the last Euros, Hungary could spring a surprise or two.
Absolutely, and of course they have got 3 home games during the European Championships as well. And of course, with pretty much, it does feel like maybe 50%. Touching 75% of the crowd being inside the Puskás Arena in Budapest, there is always that every opportunity that they could cause a massive shot, but that is a big, big if there. I'll bring Mike Arneman in now. I mean, this is too close to call, this group, isn't it, in terms of who's top, who's second, who's third. I think if you asked 100 people would probably say Hungary are going to finish bottom, but in your eyes, who's going to be top, who's going to be second, who's going to be third? Because you never know. The side who finishes third might not actually get enough points. But that is, to me, probably a little bit of a stretch. But I'm quite interested to hear your thoughts on what the top three potentially will be, because it feels like everyone's got a different order, don't they, in terms of who's top, who's second, who's third.
Absolutely, yeah. Good evening, everyone, by the way, as well. And I've, in fact, just come from another Euro stream where we were kind of covering over Hungary and this group in quite a lot of detail. And I do believe Hungary will finish bottom. I think they're going to be missing their star man, as you rightly mentioned just a moment ago, Matt, as well, and the real standout player in their ranks there. So I do think they'll be the side that, props up the group. And then for the rest of it, I think, if you look at Portugal, I watched Portugal last night and covered the game where they, hosted Israel, and they were good last night. Cristiano Ronaldo, Bruno Fernandes as well, João Cancelo, Ruben Diaz, Ruben Neves, Bernardo Silva. There's a lot of really good players in there, and that's just naming 5 or 6 off the top of my head. So I think Portugal will go through. I've got them to finish second personally to France. Of course, France, got Mbappe, they've got Griezmann, they've got N'Golo Kante, and a lot of really talented players in the French rank as well. So I've got them to go through from the group of death as winners. And then the Germans in third place for me, Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, the likes of Leroy Sané and Serge Gnabry, etc. as well, will get third. So that's the way that I see it going in terms of that group.
Well, you wouldn't be forgiven for thinking that if you saw Portugal, France, Germany, you'd think it would be 3 out of the 4 semi-finalists. But unfortunately, they're in the group stages. And that has wrapped that up in terms of our group stage predictions, in terms of previewing every side. Now we come to predictions, of course. This is never a good thing for any commentator or pundit in terms of doing predictions, as many people have already alluded to on this preview show. I'm going to go around one by one. Hopefully you've had a lot of time to think about it. I kind of want to look for your winners, your dark horses. Which side do you think will be a surprise package? Who will be potentially, I'll give you a couple of candidates in terms of being player of the year and player of the tournament, I should say, sorry, and maybe young player of the tournament, I'll say it for. So obviously, in terms of young player of the tournament, I believe it is under 23. I think they include that category for. I could be wrong. Yeah. So it's around about that. So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to have a little think. And then what's the time now? So it's 37 minutes to 10. I'll give you till 40, shall we say, 22. Maybe have a little think, see the squads in front of you. And then, of course, I'll get a reaction out of you. And while they're doing their sort of predictions and who they think will do well and which individual players will do well, of course, we are covering a lot of our of the games during the group stages and the knockout stages on the commentary hub, of course. The schedule for the first match day, Ross Vernon is on the mic for the opener tomorrow as Turkey take on Italy at the Stadio Olimpico. Wales and Switzerland will be covered by John Stuttard, who you saw in your picture earlier on, of course, before he unfortunately had technical issues that meant he couldn't be a part of the preview show. So we do apologise to you, John, and to the viewers listening in at home or watching the stream. Nicholas Jones will be bringing you Denmark versus Finland. That's the first game on Saturday ahead of a triple bill. And then Belgium then play Russia at 8 o'clock. And I was missing the game before that, actually. Wales take on Switzerland, which John Stuttard will be covering. Nicholas Jones will be doing Denmark versus Finland, and Belgium and Russia will be covered by Mike Arneman. On Sunday, Barry Swain will be bringing you Netherlands versus Ukraine from the Amsterdam Arena, and John Kane will be on the mic as England take on Croatia as the Three Lions look to roar their way to a first success of hopefully their first of what potentially could be a tournament win for them, their first since 1966. And then on Monday, we will bring you all 3 games. Ross Vernon will take you through Scotland versus Czech Republic at Hampden Park. And then on the 5 o'clock game on that day, Poland-Slovakia will be brought to you by Mike Arneman, who's at the bottom of your screen. And then I'll be making my Euro commentary debut as Spain at take on Sweden in Seville. Tuesday, wow, we've got France versus Germany at 8 o'clock. That is the game, you could say, of the group stages. It's a repeat of the semi-finals in 2016. That's at 8 o'clock. And before that, Hungary take on Portugal with Nicholas Jones. So that's your first round of fixtures, of course. The second match of fixtures will bring you later on. And, of course, we will remind you, of course, do feel free to put your comments in wherever you're watching on YouTube, whether it's Twitch or on Twitter, don't be afraid to put your questions in to our pundits and commentators and get them to potentially say what they think to your question. And you've only got about, let's say, maybe 60 seconds left in terms of your predictions and in terms of who is going to do what and which player could shine, which could see emerging talent. Of course, these European Championships always see a team or a player really shine you don't ever expect. Will we get that this year in Euro 2020, of course, which is the 60th anniversary of the first competition that was held all the way back in 1960 in France. So I presume everybody's ready to go and give their predictions.
Yeah, all good, mate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike's ready. Thumbs up from Russ. Jack said yes. Nicholas is yes. Barry's yes, as is John Kane. I'll start from left to right. So we'll go top left with Russ first. In terms of order, Russ, who are you going to say are your winners first? We'll just do with that first. Who are your winners for Euro 2020? Will there be a new name, or is there a name going to be on there for a second time, or even maybe even more potentially?
Well, my winners, guys, and I've gone, which I think might surprise a lot of you. I'm going to go for the boys where I'm from. I'm going to go for England to win the tournament.
England to win it. John Kane, I think you said Portugal. I still believe in you're going to go with that one.
Absolutely. I'm sticking with Portugal, definitely.
Portugal to win. Barry, who is your tip to win it?
I'm still torn. I'm absolutely convinced that the final will be the same final as 5 years ago. And I'm going to go for France this time. Revenge.
France to win it. France to win it. Jack, are you going to go with any of the three or someone different?
No, I also think the final will be the exact same as it was, but I do think this time France will come out on top and they'll get their revenge.
Nicholas, who is your tip? 2 for France so far. We've got John Kane, Portugal. Russ says it's coming home. Who is going to bring the trophy back to their country?
I'm going to agree with Barry and Jack and say it's France, but who they have in the final is completely wide open in my view. It could be England, it could be Portugal, or it could be the Netherlands, and also I wouldn't rule out the likes of Belgium either. So if Belgium and France take on each other in the final and Belgium win it, then I'll be completely surprised. But I'm going to go with France.
France to win it. Are you with the majority, Mike, and say France, make it 4 out of the make it 4 in terms of the pundits' predictions?
I am indeed. I feel that France will go on and get the revenge as well over Portugal in the same final. I think they'll be too strong for Portugal. As I said, I watched Portugal last night, but I think France have got more about them. They're more of a kind of an exciting prospect for me, yeah.
So 4 of the 6 involved have said that France are going to win it. I said earlier for surprise package Denmark during the tournament. I would love for someone to say that they've gone with Denmark, but I would love to obviously hear that. We'll wait and see and find out. Russ, I'll go with Mike actually this time. I'll start backwards. Who is your surprise package for this tournament?
So I've gone with the Netherlands as my sort of shock package. I think they've still got a lot of quality about them. You know, not the likes of what they used to have when they had the likes of Patrick Kluivert, etc. But there's still plenty of quality in that Netherlands side, and I've got them going all the way through to the semi-final where they'll get knocked out at that stage.
Nicholas, who is your prediction to be a dark horse, shall we say?
Well, as you probably might have guessed when I've mentioned them a couple of times, I'd probably say Belgium would be a dark horse as well, although I wouldn't rule out the likes of Denmark.
Okay, Belgium a surprise package, given they are the top-ranked side going into these European Championships, which is a real thing to say, but prediction's a prediction. Jack, who's your surprise package?
No, I mean, I've been looking at the squads, and I think Denmark, with their group, they can get off to a good start, and they can get through when they've got quality all over the field, really, so I'd go with Denmark.
So we've got Mike, who's gone with the Netherlands. We've got Nicholas, who's gone with Belgium. Jack has gone with Denmark, like myself. Barry, somebody who's kind of seen a lot of the sort of sides, and you've spoken so well about certain sides. Are you maybe toying with one of the 3 suggestions we've gone with already in this preview?
Well, as Nicholas has gone for Belgium, could I go for France?
We haven't had North Macedonia as 500-1 winners yet. No.
No, I don't think not a surprise package. They might be packing their bags early, but me and Jack are so far have agreed on everything, and I'm agreeing with you, Matt, as well as Jack, and I'm going to go with Denmark. I think they might be the surprise package.
Denmark, the surprise package. John, are you toying with the idea of Denmark, or are you going to go with someone completely different?
Actually, until recently, I was thinking Denmark will be the surprise package, but I've actually changed my mind over the last week or so, and I've actually gone closer to home and say Scotland. I think Scotland will be the surprise package.
Okay.
Interesting.
I mean, they do have quite a nice group, as everyone knows. Croatia, Czech Republic, and the old enemy in there in England. Russ, last but not least, is there someone different in there? Scotland was a very surprising choice from John. It certainly wasn't expected in terms of surprise anyway. Who are you thinking about being the surprise package, Russ?
Well, my surprise package, I've got two. I think England, because I think, as I've mentioned, I think they're going to go all the way, and I think he's going to come home. And another one, which is a player who I think is going to have who not many people think he's going to have a very good tournament, who will burst on the scene towards the end. I'm going to say Phil Foden. I think he'll be one of the standout players in the tournament this year.
Okay, fair enough.
So you think England are going to win it, but they're also the surprise package?
Yeah. Here's why I'm saying they're going to be a surprise package, Jack. I think a lot of people don't think we're going to win it. You see, so I think we're going to surprise a lot of people and win the tournament and fetch it home.
That's all right. You don't have to explain yourself, mate. Yeah.
We'll do that. We'll do that off air when it's a bit more scope to really tear each other's hair out. In terms of potential candidates for maybe player of the tournament, I mean, Antoine Griezmann won it last time. Of course, he's missing the first game, as Jack mentioned, for France against Germany. Is he in either one of your predictions? I'm going to go with a random person this time. I'm going to go with Nicholas to start us off, of course, spice things up just a little bit and not make it so it goes from top to bottom or bottom to top as we've done before. Nicholas, who's your potential, one of your few people, your players of the tournaments anyway?
I don't think I've been able to find anyone who would really stand out as a player of the tournament. But if I was to go, I'd say probably one of the really young ones might have to go for it, and that is if they start. So the first one that comes to my head, if he starts, that is Marcus Forss, because we know what a good player he is when he's been at Brentford this season. It's just how well he does in his games against Finland. So in any of the games that Finland's do, and he starts, I reckon he could make quite a good impression.
Okay, all right. Mike, who is your potential candidate, shall we say, to be in the running for player of the tournament?
So I had N'Golo Kante as one of mine for France. I think that he's been fantastic for Chelsea, helped them win the Champions League, also to get up there in the Premier League as well and qualify for the Champions League that way. So I think N'Golo Kante's in there. But just throwing a random name out there as well, I think if I'm looking at other nations that aren't, favourites, etc., maybe somebody from Finland, like a Glenn Kamara, maybe somebody like that.
Okay, Glenn Kamara. We've had two Finland players in there. Maybe we're maybe thinking the idea of Finland will actually do very well on their European debut. Who knows? We shall see. I'll go to Jack next. Potential candidates for player of the tournament. I'll be very surprised there's not a French player in there, Jack.
Yeah, I'm going to break the Finland mold, and I'm going to be really boring and go for Kylian Mbappe. He's 22. I mean, what has he not? Well, this is pretty much one of the only things he's not won now. He's unbelievable. I absolutely love watching him, and it's going to be his tournament. He's going to rip it up again, like he did in 2018. He's going to rip it up.
Just correcting you there, Matt, as well. I did actually say N'Golo Kante will be my player of the tournament. Glenn Kamara will be one, kind of just another
I did take that into account. Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, Kante's virtually got every trophy that he can get his hands on individually. Probably hasn't quite got the acknowledgement he so deserves. So maybe the European Championship Player of the Tournament will be finally where he can put himself individually on the pedestal with the greats in modern day football. Go to John first, leave the last one to Barry. Any candidates for Player of the Tournament? Any some surprising names? Sorry, Russ as well, I do beg your pardon. Anyone else in there as well, John, that you might maybe think could have a really good tournament and shine for their nation?
I think the player of the tournament is going to be the guy who's actually going to stop France in the final, and that's going to be Ruben Diaz. He's going to be the player of the tournament.
Okay, very good choice. Very good choice. Russ, your player of the tournament or potential candidates for player of the tournament? I've been nice and allowed one or maybe 1 to 3. So give me some of the names that you've got in your mind, Russ.
Russ, you're on mute.
After all that, we can't hear him.
he was like winding himself up.
Yeah, he's getting himself psyched.
And then he was on mute.
I've got 4 for my player.
You only nailed one.
I think it's going to be between
Definitely put a £5 note inside of him, that's for sure.
I think it's going to be one of these 4, and one of them may surprise you. So I'm going to go with the non-surprising ones first. I'm going to go with CR7.
Okay.
CR7. N'Golo Conte.
Yeah. Okay.
Robert Lewandowski.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And the surprising one in there, Timothy Castagna.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
that is a surprising.
Yeah.
Good
That is a very good shot. Very, very unexpected.
Very good shout, actually.
Yeah.
Russ
It wasn't
said-
Alioski. I was half expecting it to be the
I was expecting Alioski.
Mike, if I were to chuck a Leeds player in there, probably go with Mateusz Klich over Alioski for Poland. Another Polish player who can get forward and create chances and score a few goals. Can even score from 20 yards, 30 yards.
Yeah, he's good.
He's a good player. He's got a lot about him. He can unlock the door, can't he? Yeah.
You can,
Last but not least, we'll go with Barry. Timothy Castagna, we've heard Marcus Force, we've heard N'Golo Kante, we've heard a wide range of names. Are you going to spread some light and maybe throw a little component to the fire, spice things up even more, or are you going to be very safe and kind of go with a Kylian Mbappe?
Yeah. Me and Jack seem to be the same way. Everything I've written down, I was going to say Kylian.
You sure you're not sat there next to each other copying each other?
we're in the same city, but
you can have it back now. Kylian Mbappe. I think he's going to get the firepower. I think he's going to get fed. He's going to score goals. He's going to entertain. He's going to cause no end of problems. And I totally agree with Jack. I think he's going to be player of the tournament.
So those are our pundits' predictions, of course. I'd hope to see some predictions from various viewers, but of course that isn't the case. And that's pretty much all we've got time for on the Euro 2020 preview show. Remember, it begins tomorrow. Exactly 1 whole year since it was planned. It will begin tomorrow at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome as Italy take on Turkey. From the 11th of June to the 11th of July. Remember, England kick off on Sunday at 2 p.m. at Wembley. Of course, you would have also heard all this week and the last few weeks, football's coming home, probably World in Motion, potentially would have been playing through people's headphones. As well, which of course was a real cult song from Russia 2018. My thanks go to all our commentators and pundits. Of course, you'll be hearing their voices throughout the tournament. My thanks to Russ, John, Barry, Jack, Nicholas, and a very brief substitute appearance from Mike Harnham, and almost like John Terry. You might as well get your Chelsea kit on there in terms of the contribution that you made there.
Sounds like Harry Kane.
Wrong side of London. Barry, that's certainly the wrong side of London.
But no, genuinely, very gracious, very grateful for your valuable inputs and predictions and various sort of analysis you've given on your respective teams. And let's hope it will be an exciting tournament. Remember, Greece and Denmark shook the world in 1992 and 2004 with their wins. Will it be something similar? Or will we be want to see the big hitters, the likes of France, Germany, Portugal, getting their names on the trophy again? One of the new emerging nations, Belgium, maybe even England. Is football coming home? It certainly will be at Wembley, but will the Henri Delany Trophy be come the 11th of July? Good luck to everyone involved, all the teams, and we'll be lovely. And we'll be looking forward to hearing you and seeing all you when, of course, we'll be kicking off our coverage on the Commentary Hub. So from all of us here tonight, thank you for tuning in. Goodbye, and we will see you at various times for our European coverage. See you very, very soon. Bye for now.